Hey, Matt the Goblin Piper here. Happy Halloween. I think I'll be posting this video on Halloween. It is currently Monday for me, but decided to come out here and smoke a pipe and chat with y'all. So I've made a couple videos within the last week or so, spooky, weird, and strange. Even though this video is most likely going out on Halloween, I don't have a spooky story for you. But this is something that I was thinking about the last couple days quite a bit. I thought I might share it with you guys. First, smoking some Torben Dansk Black Velvet in my Rat Trace Monarch. And this tail is actually a bit of a mystery. So I'll front load you with that. Give me a moment, please. This stuff is pretty good. Never had it before. I opened a tin of it last night and had some. The tin aroma on this thing is wild. Something that I've never experienced before. But the actual smoking of it is a very nice aroma. I don't even know what tobaccos are in this one. Anyways, Silvu, I apologize, smoking with my pipe in my mouth. You guys know that comes with the territory with me. I do all the things that I shouldn't do, but it's part of my charm. So, you know, it's that time of year when, you know, beginning of the holidays, start thinking about past family members, people you've lost. I like to think about the stories that I've been told by these people that have now passed. And my mom's mom, she was quite the storyteller. She had a lot of stories to tell about our family throughout the generations and things. But the thing that I've been thinking about the most was her dad. Now, her dad was born John O'Day, and he was born somewhere in Ireland. Came over with his parents when he was 5 years old. And his mom, and I don't really know much about his dad. I'm sure he was around. But the mom specifically, she was definitely the matriarch. She was the mover and the shaker. She made the decisions, I think, from what little we know about them as people. But she set up a boarding house. She owned a boarding house, and so my great-grandfather grew up, you know, seeing all kinds of people come in and out. Very respectful boarding house, though. There was no shenanigans. And that's going to play into the story a little bit later. But, so he grew up in that situation, and she was a very strict woman. They weren't, from what I can tell, they weren't particularly close, him and his mom. But don't know a whole lot about his childhood, other than that. And the next major event in his life is I think he was probably 15, 16, I would guess. World War I, the Great War, broke out, and he volunteered. Lied about his age, you know, something that happened quite a bit. Went to France. Now, what happened to France, what he did in France, he never did divulge. But some assumptions were made, because from what my grandmother was told about her dad, either by him or by somebody else, it was a very normal child at the time, you know, growing up. His mom was very strict, so he probably did get into some trouble, but I think that most likely that just happened to be because he was just a boy doing boy stuff, and the mom, things had to be a very particular way. When he came home, things were a bit different. He had developed a few bad traits. He liked to stay out to the wee hours of the morning. Also liked to drink quite a bit. And he also liked to get into fights. And his mom he'd come home, stumbling home, and she wouldn't let him in. She'd lock him out. There was a curfew for this boarding house, and it applied to family as well. So this probably went on for a very short amount of time, because I highly doubt my great-great-grandmother was willing to allow such disruptions to go on for too long. His final indiscretion was that he slid down the banister in the boarding house, and she threw him out. As far as we know, he was an only child. So any extended family are unknown. So when he was kicked out, and his mom no longer wanted to have anything to do with him, basically, I would guess, that was it. I don't know. I don't think they ever saw each other again. I can't imagine he was probably much more than 18 or 19 at the time. You know, just looking at the timeline of things, when American troops entered the war, and when its conclusion was, if he'd gone in when he was 15, 16, I can't imagine he was more than 17, 18. I doubt he was probably over there for, you know, more than a year, maybe a year and a half at most, depending on that whole procedure. Because, you know, when the war ends, that doesn't mean everybody gets to go home at once. It really just depends on what still has to be done. And so I really don't know that timeline. But anyways, so I can't recall where that boarding house was, but I do know where his next stop was. He moved to Detroit, and he became a test car driver for one of the major manufacturers of the time. So early, you know, 1920, 21, 22, he drove car around the test tracks for all the new models coming out. He did that for a few years, but he never was one to stay in one place for very long. So it's hard to say how long he did that. But then he decided that he was going to become a farmer. So he moved to North Dakota and bought some land. Now, there was a family next door to this plot of land that he bought, and it was owned by a Norwegian couple and their family. And they very quickly realized that he had absolutely no idea how to farm, what it entailed, nothing. He had bought the land, and they said that he would just stand out there and look and kind of just turn around, like trying to make a plan, but having absolutely no idea where to even start. So they helped him out. And this family's last name was Mo. And spoiler alert, one of their children would be my great grandmother, Molly Mo. And so that went on for a little while, and of course, you know, they courted. I couldn't tell you how old she was at the time. Probably, you know, somewhere between 17 and 20. Now, he kind of found himself in the same situation as he did with his mom. Now, this is a very religious Norwegian family. They were Lutheran, and they didn't take stock in funny business of any sort. So, from what I've heard, it was a very tumultuous time in the family. Of course, you know, my great-grandma had fallen head over heels for this dark-haired Irishman, who was a veteran to boot, all those things, you know, had all these stories that he would tell. And that was something that everybody would say about my great-grandfather, is that he could tell a story, he could spin a yarn, and you wouldn't know if it was true or not. It was just that good. So as a result, he's also a very good liar. So told her all these dreams and plans that he had, and you know, and they incorporated his farm into the Mo family farm, and they worked on all that land together. They got married at some point and started having a family, and he decided that, you know, maybe farming's not so great, so I think I'm going to become a fisherman. So he packed up his family, which now included 3 kids, the middle one being my grandmother, and he moved them to northern Idaho to become a fisherman. Now, most of us would assume that if you were going to become some kind of a commercial fisherman of some variety, you would do it on the ocean. No, this guy, his plan was to get a boat, go out on a lake, and catch whatever you could. May it be, you know, crappie, smallmouth, whatever, and he was going to make a living off of that. Now, know anything about Idaho, not a whole lot of commercial fishing going on here. We've got some great rivers and lakes and streams, you know, for trout fishing. I mean, there's copious amounts of fish, but not on a commercial level. There's just not. I mean, I don't even know if you could get a commercial license for fishing in Idaho. I really don't. Especially then. There might have not been so many rules as there are now, but who are you going to sell it to? I mean, everybody else around here knows how to fish. They're not going to buy fish from you. They're going to go out and get their own fish for free. So they tried that, and then they moved to various other locations and did many other things, and he finally settled on becoming and this was years and years later, he decided that he was going to open a shop and become he was going to be a TV and VCR repairman. So this is many, many years later. I mean, this is well into, I don't know, the 80s. So he was getting on in age. Now, my great-grandma, Mo, she passed away. And so, and most of the kids were grown up and moved away. And one of his sons actually went into business with him, and still, as of now, he's about to retire himself, continue doing TV and VCR repair. Now he's moved on to other things since then, you know, being as VCRs are not in high demand, nor are the repairmen who fix them. But he settled on that, and you know, and my great grandma passed away, and then one of the biggest scandals of this whole story, really, you know, is that he decided to marry my grandma Molly's sister, who apparently had always had a crush on him, and now in their old age, they decided to get together and marry, which of course was just outrageous to my grandmother, because first of all, her aunt, not her favorite person, and then also her dad, she didn't have many good things to say about her dad, so of course it just gave her this, you know, added fuel to to her impotent rage about the whole situation. And I don't know if her dad and her, if they spoke much after that. I don't know. My grandma, well, she was funny. I have some stories about her that I'll tell you guys at a later time. But the mystery of this story is about 4 years ago, I did the Ancestry.com thing, and I know that, you know, it's all about, you know, the active genes, you know, what comes up, and, you know, things aren't, you know, necessarily concrete enough to determine, you know, places of origin, but I have absolutely no Irish DNA in me at all. I have a good portion of Norwegian, and then the rest is basically, you know, there's a sliver that's northern Germany, some in Denmark, but the biggest chunk is Welsh and English. So no Irish. Now, also, his family could not have been, you know, possibly may not have been originally from Ireland either. But, you know, it kind of, everybody always kind of wondered what was true and what wasn't with him. And there's really no way to tell. I mean, a lot of those records, you know, even though it was within the last 120 years, you know, finding the bit that pertains to who the person, you know, the particular person you're looking for, you know, coming through Ellis Island or wherever it may be, that's not easy to do, and it's not all digitized, and I would love to pay somebody copious amounts of money to figure it out for me, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, and I have a job and a family, so I'm not traipsing across the country going through old ledgers and whatnot, even though that sounds a lot, you know, sounds like a lot of fun. That's something I would love to do, but maybe someday we'll figure it out. But, you know, that's just the story of my great-grandpa Day. And of course, I mentioned that his name, he was born John O'Day, but when they moved to America, they dropped the O, and they just left it as Day, I guess to blend in a little bit more, and I suppose the Irish were not the, you know, most popular group at the time, you know, and they hadn't been for some time. But anyways, well, that's the story. You know, that's what's been, I've been thinking about, you know, the last week. It's always interesting, and I think it would be fun to find out, you know, go back in time and actually see all these events for yourself, but also it's awfully fun to keep the mystery alive too, because you never know. It could be a much bigger story out there, and you just don't know it. So sometimes I like to think about it and imagine who he might have really been, and the places that he might have gone, and what he was hiding from, and, you know, all these things. But either way, he was an interesting guy. Never got to meet him, but I think as much of a rascal as he was, we probably would have got along pretty well, even though my grandmother probably would have hated it. So anyways, guys, I'll talk to you later.